Welcome back to Reflections Unfiltered. I'm Nikki Callahan here with John Harvey. And today I want to begin with an old confusion, one that keeps changing clothes but never really changes its nature. We keep mistaking charisma for character. We do it in politics, in business, in spiritual circles, even in our own homes. A person enters the room with heat, with polish, with a kind of gravitational pull, and we think, there, that must be strength. But charm is not proof, it's weather. Character is what remains after the weather passes.
Yes, and history is crowded with useful liars. Not always monstrous at first, sometimes merely convenient. They study hunger in a population, then feed it words. They tell each tribe what it most wants confirmed. That's the dangerous part. The lie doesn't arrive dressed as evil. It arrives as relief.
Relief, that's exactly it. Like cool water that turns out to be salt. I think the honest leader often feels less satisfying in the moment because truth has edges. It asks something of us. It refuses to flatter the little throne of ego each of us carries around. And so the liar can seem, oddly, more compassionate, more for the people. But if someone must keep sedating you to keep your trust, that isn't care. That's dependency.
The Templar image is useful here, not as nostalgia, but as a lens. A serious order expected a person to bind himself before he presumed to guide others. Speech was not decoration, it was vow. In our age, language is often treated as strategy, as branding, as movable scenery. But if words are endlessly adjustable, then conscience becomes adjustable too.
And truthfulness, then, is not a campaign slogan. It's a discipline, almost an ascetic one. It means speaking without constantly shaping yourself into whatever will earn applause. It means saying, this is hard, when it is hard. I was wrong when you were wrong. I cannot promise that, when the room is hungry for promises. That kind of honesty can look plain beside glitter. It can even look weak for a season.
I might be wrong on the date. History blurs a bit when you've lived through too many systems, but civilizations tend to decline morally before they decline administratively. They stop honouring truth as a duty and begin rewarding performance. Then leaders become actors trapped in their own masks.
That lands deeply, because the first betrayal is rarely of the public. It's inward. You feel yourself trimming one sentence, softening one fact, leaving one shadow unexplored because it might cost you affection. And if you keep doing that, eventually you can no longer hear your own real voice. So maybe the first rule is simple, though not easy. Trust the one who would rather disappoint you with truth than comfort you with illusion.
And perhaps be wary of anyone who seems too eager to be loved while holding power.
Yes, because leadership worthy of trust is not built on enchantment. It's built on reality endured, reality spoken, and reality faced without cosmetics.
There's an older standard, almost severe by modern taste. If a person cannot govern himself, he has no business governing others. We hear that now and think it sounds moralistic, but it's actually practical. Temper, vanity, appetite, those are not private ornaments. They leak, they become policy, culture, atmosphere. A leader's unruled interior eventually becomes the public's burden.
I felt that in a much smaller arena, just teaching movement. If I walk into a room agitated, students feel it before I speak. If I'm trying to prove something, they tense. The body always tells the truth first. And power amplifies that. Someone with authority doesn't merely have moods, they have weather systems. So when we ask whether a leader has self-mastery, we're really asking what climate follows this person.
That's beautifully put. What climate follows this person? Vanity is especially corrosive because it makes reality secondary to image maintenance. Then decisions aren't made for the good, they're made to preserve the reflection in the mirror. And temper, well, temper makes people around power become cautious in the wrong way. They stop telling the truth upward. They begin managing the leader instead of the work.
And appetite, whether for praise, wealth, conquest, attention, has that bottomless quality. It keeps asking to be fed, which means the public is never really being served. It's being harvested. I know that sounds stark, but I don't know another honest word for it. A person who cannot say no to themselves will eventually say yes at everyone else's expense.
The old knightly and monastic traditions understood something modern culture resists. Restraint is not repression when freely chosen for a higher purpose. It is evidence, quiet evidence. The person who could indulge and does not, who could retaliate and refrains, who could boast and remains measured, that person offers the only credible sign that power has not yet occupied the soul.
There's something almost invisible about true discipline. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need a spotlight. It's in the pause before anger speaks. It's in the refusal to humiliate someone just because you can. It's in keeping your appetites on a short leash so they don't drag your name and everyone else's safety through the dust.
Public trust then begins in private habits. Not perfection. I don't mean some polished, impossible purity. I mean orderedness. A person aware of his shadows and not secretly in love with them.
Yes, because authority that lasts has roots underground. We see the speech, the decision, the ceremony, but beneath that are ordinary unseen choices, what one reads, how one apologizes, whether one listens, whether one can endure being contradicted without turning cruel. Self-mastery is not glamorous. It's almost monastic in its plainness. But maybe that's why it matters. It keeps power from becoming possession. It reminds the soul, you are a steward, not a god. When I think of leadership at its highest test, I don't first think of triumph. I think of burden. Who carries weight without theatrics? Who keeps promises when the room is empty and there's no reward in sight? Who honors trust when betrayal would be easy, profitable, maybe even praised? Those questions feel old to me in the best way, like stone steps worn smooth by generations of feet.
Yes, we are too impressed by visible winning. But duty is usually quiet. It's paperwork no one applauds. It's restraint in moments when one could exploit ambiguity. It's fidelity to law, not because law is always convenient, but because without it, power drifts toward appetite again. The keeper of law can seem unimaginative beside the worshipper of victory, less dazzling, less cinematic, but civilizations survive on the former.
That contrast matters so much, the keeper of law versus the worshipper of victory, because when justice and winning collide, something hidden gets revealed. If a leader will injure the moral frame just to remain undefeated, then victory was never the goal. Domination was. And domination has a smell to it, metallic, airless, like a room with no windows.
In strategic life, losing is inevitable at some point. An election, a campaign, an argument, a season of influence, whatever form it takes. The real question is what a person does with defeat. Does he absorb it, learn from it, and remain inside the boundaries of justice? Or does he reinterpret loss as permission for vengeance?
I keep coming back to that, because maybe the final proof of character is not how someone rises, but how they descend. Can they lose without setting fire to the temple on the way out? Can they grieve without making grief everyone else's punishment? That, to me, feels like the high gate, the narrow one.
And it requires a certain metaphysical humility, if I can put it that way, to understand that one's personal defeat is not the end of reality. The order of things must continue. The law must continue. Other people's futures must continue. The leader who cannot accept limits eventually becomes a danger to the very world he claims to defend.
So maybe that's where all three of these reflections meet. Tell the truth even when it costs charm. Govern yourself before you reach for power. And when duty demands it, when justice demands it, accept loss without becoming destructive. Not because losing is noble in itself, but because the soul must never be allowed to devour the common good.
That's well said. Austerely said, even, which is probably appropriate.
Maybe so, John, thank you. And to everyone listening, we'll keep walking these old questions together, one careful step at a time.
Until next time, take care of your inner government.
Goodbye, John.
Goodbye, Nikki.